I'm really pleased to be here interviewing you about your new collection, Finding a Way. Here it is. It's wonderful. And I was just remembering when I gave you the offer, which was almost a year ago today, wasn't it? Like January the 11th.
Yeah, it was, yes.
Something like that.
Yeah. Goodness, seems longer ago than a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a wonderful collection and we're really pleased at Ad Hoc Fiction to be publishing it. And I just wanted to read the quote on the back by David Swann, a flash fiction writer and lecturer at Southampton. And he said, "What gives this book its power is the writer's commitment to the everyday. Without a hint of melodrama, Diane Simmons shows how ordinary life is altered and made strange by the death of a loved one. I was moved beyond words by this fine, modest, understated and perceptive book." And I think that's all true. I think it really is like that, and that I was very moved by it too. And I suppose I got the idea that I really wanted to publish a work after seeing that story that you wrote that was shortlisted by David Swann in the Bath Flash Fiction Award in October.
6 months yesterday. That one.
Yeah. It was like in 2017, wasn't it? October.
Yes.
Yeah.
David Swann said some lovely things about the story. And
he did, and it was all true. And do you want to just say a little bit about flash fiction? Just in case people who are listening don't know, because all these stories are a certain length.
Well, flash fiction is generally considered to be under 1,000 words. It's often 500 words or 300 words. It has all sorts of different names. Often if it's 100 words, it's called micro or short fiction. But I think micro and flash fiction are the two terms, certainly in the UK, that are used. Yeah.
Can you give us just a quick outline of the book as well?
Yes. Well, it's a series of 51 connected flash fictions on the theme of grief, and it follows a family over a 2.5-year period as they deal with loss. All the stories in it can be read individually or in any order, but it can be read as a whole sort of story in itself, I suppose. A very loose story. It's a very, there is character development and things, but it's not. I can't think of the word. I didn't write it like that. It's just a series of stories.
Yeah, they're very connected, and also it's not a memoir, but it's triggered off by a real life event, the devastating loss of your daughter Laura. And I was wondering whether you could say a little bit about how you wrote it, because, as I said, it's based on the true life event, but it's not actually, the stories aren't actual things that happen.
Yeah, Laura died in 2015 after a very, very short illness. But many of the stories in the collection they're things that I've read about, they're things that friends have told me, and I've gone away and played, what if with it, what if. And I've done that as well with the ones that are closer to home. There are some in there that contain perhaps a small autobiographical fact that I've gone and often the story has come from a feeling or an emotion, and that has prompted the story. And I suppose the best way of explaining that is to give an example. In my first story in the collection, which is also called a collection, it involves a woman throwing jewellery into the river.
Yeah.
And this came about after Laura died. I couldn't get out of my head that the small collection of jewellery that I had would no longer be shared between my two daughters, that my other daughter would inherit it all. And jewellery had been a big thing between the three of us when we went to family parties and weddings. They would say, "Oh, can I borrow this ring?" or "Can I borrow that necklace?" And they would sort of almost fight over it. And there was always talk of, "Oh, when you die, I'm having this," and And I kept thinking, what if I didn't have another daughter to have this jewellery, and I couldn't get the image of a woman throwing jewellery into a river out of my head. And when I started,
really powerful image.
when I started writing again, this was the first story I wrote. But that woman isn't me in the story. I've never thrown jewellery into the river. You know, it comes from a feeling.
Yes.
You know, and in the story it also has the woman had given her daughter a ring on her graduation, and I never did that. You know, so it's there is some fact in maybe most of the stories, but
that's what you did with them. Yeah, I've heard you reading that story several times. It's really very powerful.
Yes.
It's been on 100 Voices, 100 Voices,
and I've read it at National Flash Fiction Day events and Bath Flash Fiction events, and also in Radio Bristol recently. I read it.
Yeah, that is really good. It's good to have that airing, I think. Yeah. Yes, so going back to when I signed the contract with you in March, at that moment, I can't remember quite how many stories you already had, but Ad Hoc Fiction only publishes full collections, so I did say to you that we wanted to have so many pages and so many, I think 21,000 words altogether.
Yes.
So you had quite a year of it, didn't you?
I did.
I don't know how many more you had to write at that
I think
stage.
I had about 20 stories.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time going, eek, but I only really had a moment's hesitation about, you know, accepting the challenge. I kind of knew I could do it.
Yes.
I just thought I can do this. And within minutes of you sending the email, I had about another 12 story ideas.
Did you? Within minutes?
Within
they just
minutes.
Came into your head?
They just came, and I wrote them down. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I set up a folder with story ideas, and I carried on doing that throughout the year, and crossed them off as I did it. And I was quite systematic about it. There weren't many. I looked at a list again recently, and there weren't many on there that didn't make it into being full-blown stories. And if they didn't, they got in somehow into another story. You know, they found their way in. And as the year went on, stories kept, because one story would lead into another. You know, if one thing happened, I'm thinking, if that's happened to that character, then that's got to happen. So it would give me another story.
You finished them in about August, didn't you? Before
I think
you edited.
so. Yeah, I set myself an aim of writing one a week.
Yes.
But of course, that I loved it because I would have one news story and then I'd perhaps have 6 or 7 that needed editing, all in different stages. You know, and when I say I write a story a week, I mean a very basic draft. I'm not a fast writer at all. You know, I usually spend weeks and weeks on a flash. So I would have a basic one, and then I think, right, I've got another one in the bag, and then I'd move on to another one, and then go back to them, and so I'd be all the time. So it made it a really interesting process because there was always something that needed doing. If I wasn't in the mood for being creative, then I could edit. You know, so I really enjoyed that process. Because actually writing new stuff is hell, isn't it? It's horrible. But
you love editing.
I love editing. It's my idea of heaven to sit there and edit a story. So it was I wrote. It took up. I think I say it took up my whole year. It didn't. I was doing other things, but it was always on my mind.
Yes.
You know, from no matter what I was doing, I was thinking, oh, that's a good idea for a story, or thinking, or fretting about it, and there were a few changes of direction, a few little panics, but not many. I think it was quite a smooth process.
You spent some time ordering it, didn't you?
Yes.
What was the right sequence? And
that
was interesting.
Yeah, that was quite easy to do because there is a bit of a narrative, and certain things had to happen at certain times. For instance, there's stories that are set on birthdays or anniversaries. Yes. So they have to happen at a certain time. Yeah,
because you've got a timeline in here, haven't you?
Yes, it starts off, each flash is given a time and the character it's about, so it makes it easy for the reader to know what's going on. And so I printed them all out in tiny little things, and I put them all over my dining room,
you?
my living room floor.
You had little pages.
Yeah, little pages, really sweet little book
Oh,
that was big,
right.
and put them on my living room floor in an order I thought might be okay. But I didn't want too many together that were too dialogue heavy, or were too short, or too long, or perhaps had similar beginnings.
Yes.
So
that's important.
yeah, so I wanted to have enough variety. So I put them in an order I thought would work, but of course that's quite dangerous, because you've got this narrative and you've got dates mentioned all the time in the story about, someone that happened 6 months ago, or that happened 2 years ago, and so if you mess with it, you're asking for trouble, really. But I got an order, and when I sent it for editing, I don't think it was changed at all. I think it stayed as it was. Yeah.
Well, going back to what David Swann said, he's pointing out, and what I think is unique about the whole collection is that it's got the different angles you said from different members of a family, concentrating on quite ordinary everyday experiences, which I think is very understandable to most people. So it makes it very helpful for anyone who's going through a process like this, seeing how a family does that. And I don't know whether you had that in mind when you wrote the collection, that it could be actually quite helpful for other people going through something like this, a family going through a big loss.
I think when I first wrote it, I intended it to be a pamphlet, so it was only, I think, it was going to be about 20 stories long, I suspect.
Yeah.
At first I just thought, that perhaps would work as a collection, but it wasn't long afterwards. It's quite hard to remember. It wasn't long after I thought, actually, that could be really helpful to people. And people kept saying to me, friends kept saying to me, goodness, that would be great, these stories would be so good to use in workshops to start off discussions.
I think so, yeah. I think excellent.
And so that sort of occurred to me. And as I wrote more and more, and there's been people on Twitter stories that I've already had published, because some of these have been published, have asked me to point them towards the stories because they know somebody who's grieving.
Yes, because I think David Swann said that about a student, didn't he?
Yes,
he referred a student to you.
Yeah, I think that there's that recognition. Oh, it's not just me that feels like that. I think that's the thing, and also when Michael Loveday was editing it, he said that you learned something from every story. You learned something about grief.
Yeah.
So I think for not only helping people who are grieving, but helping people who've not experienced grief know what someone is going through. I mean, so I'm obviously just one person, but I think there are very, people have similar things and feelings.
Yeah, I was following on from that. There are a couple of stories which just show that often what people think about someone grieving and the sort of stages they're supposed to have reached, and what sort of ideas that you can get over something.
Yes.
And I think there used to be the sort of like an almost magical number of 2 years. You're supposed to have got over something by then, but as I thought what was really good is you got a story which actually says that it's not that you get over something in 2 years, that is that it makes it more real that some loss has happened. It's something that hits home after that time. So I like the way you did that, showing that different life can be built around a terrible loss, but it doesn't make it go away.
No, I think
the time doesn't. Yeah.
I think that it's something that everybody says, like you say, that you get over it. And when I wrote the story, which is called Over It, it did come out of total frustration.
Yes.
That people expect you to move on, and they talk about cycles of grief, but now what they say is that these all come at different points and come back. It's not it's not like you're going through something, you'll come out at the end of it and everything will be lovely.
No.
And to me, I don't feel that it's something you get over. For me, when it comes back, I mean, you don't think about your loss as much. It's not at the forefront of your mind as much, but when it does come back, it's just as horrible, as powerful as it ever was.
Yeah,
and I think that's not really something that I expected or understood.
No,
really.
And I was always struck when I read the story 6 months yesterday about that line. I think comes in the middle of the story. It's like a pivotal line where the character Liz says she realised that she should have asked another person who's had lost a husband or wife, I think, and says not how are you, but how are you today.
Yeah.
So it shows that things like shift,
Yeah.
as you said, from moment to moment, and that's really important that you make it current rather than a generalised statement.
After Laura died, it was my son-in-law that told me about that you know, how are you today? Because grief, as I said before, it moves. It's not the same really from minute to minute. It's certainly not day to day.
Yeah.
It's worse at times like Christmas and anniversaries, and when you're tired and when you've drunk too much, you know. And just saying how are you just doesn't cut it. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So saying something, how are you today, or you know, or how you know, it allows you to be able to say, oh, I'm really bad today, or things are better, or I'm feeling hopeful today. Whereas yesterday the person might have felt, you know, in despair. So
yeah, I think that Rick's worked really well going in the middle of that story, because then you can see what happened next, and in that whole scenario.
Yeah.
And going back to the book and the cover's by a writer and artist, Jeanette Shepherd.
Yes.
And we're very pleased with how the blues came out.
Yes, we are.
Could you
I had
say
a
more
dream
about
it was
how
orange.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do you like the image, and how did you decide on it with Jeanette?
Jeanette, I've seen some of the sketches she's done and really loved her work, and so when I was thinking about the cover, I emailed her and said, have you got anything that would fit the theme of grief? And she said she sent me something straight away and said she'd just done it, and I loved it straight away, but it was black and white at the time, and I thought it might be a bit gloomy. She very cleverly added colour to it, and I thought it fitted very much, you know, as a fitting metaphor for grief, you know, with a road going through it, leading somewhere.
I thought that.
And I just thought, oh, it just like Haggett, and she didn't even know the title of the book, which I just thought was amazing, and she sent me this. And it was only weeks later, after she'd done all she coloured it in to produce this wonderful thing, I said, you know, is it a road or a river? Because people were having debates about it, and she said it's neither. It's just a line.
The audience thinks, is it a road or a river?
Yeah. No, she said it's just a line, and you know, and I liked it even more then, because I thought it could just be whatever you wanted it to be.
It, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Apparently, John, who's published it, laid it up on Ad Hoc Fiction, says there's 16 different blues in this.
Oh goodness!
I didn't know there were that many.
No, I think it's come out wonderfully. I think it looks.
Yeah, and the back's good as well.
Yeah. Jeanette came up with a really good idea
around.
of having this nice bit here, so that the white shows up really well.
Yeah.
No, I think it looks with
the
really
quotes.
Good.
We got quotes on there from crime writer Sarah Hilary, who's local to Bath.
Yes, it's a wonderful quote. Yeah.
And Santino Prinzi, who's your co-director with Ingrid of National Flash Fiction Day, and Meg Popcrass.
Yes.
Who's done another collection with Ad Hoc.
Yeah.
So it's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And inside, so you should look inside. It's a nice picture of you.
Took about 84 pictures to get that.
And so we've got the 51 stories.
Yes.
Excellent. See where we are next on our interview now.
Have a little glass of wine. Let's sip of wine.
Yeah. Yes, so we're coming to the end of the interview, I think. And I know that with my own writing, sometimes I like some stories and sometimes I go off them. But which ones are you currently most satisfied with?
I think I like the ones best that I've had the best response to, I suppose. And they tend to be ones that I've read out. I do quite a few readings, and I think getting a response from people is lovely. So a collection is one of my favourite ones. I've read that at a lot of events and got a good response to it. But also I really like the ones that write themselves. You know, there are some stories that you slog over, and there are some that just pour into the page.
Yes, yes.
I suppose I'm thinking of Images, which was, I suppose, the first flash I was ever really proud of. It dates back to 2013.
Oh, right,
and
okay.
That was from a National Flash Fiction Day prompt, and it just poured onto the page. So I've always been very fond of that one, and it went on to be published in National Flash Fiction Day Anthology and also New Flash Fiction Review. And 6 Months Yesterday that we mentioned earlier, I'm very fond of. And another one called Silenced, which again just wrote itself.
Great.
Some, you know, you look at and because they're
but
tricky.
then you'll go back and like them again.
Yes, yes. And other people like them, they don't know the angst.
Yes.
You know, and I think just because a story has taken a lot of time to get right, it doesn't always mean that it's not as good a story as the others. Sometimes it's better because you haven't worked so hard on it. Yeah.
Well, Images, of course, is from the sort of bringing in someone else into the family who's suffered a loss, isn't it? Which is an interesting story.
Yes.
There's a few stories about that person.
Yes,
Yeah. So, you said you've read a number of these in different settings, so when we finish the interview, we're going to have a little break, aren't we?
Yes.
In fact, we're going to have a toast now.
Yeah.
We're going to have a toast now.
Yeah.
So, were you going to ask people to get themselves a glass of wine?
Yes. If you haven't got a glass of wine, could you go and get one? And perhaps we'll have a toast and perhaps a few crisps and a bit of cheese.
Yeah. So we're going to do an initial toast now.
Yes.
So here's to Finding a Way and to its great success. I'm sure it'll be really successful and many people will learn from and enjoy these stories.
Thank you, Jude.
Yeah, another one. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.